Well, welcome back to CEO Talks. Today I'm joined by Steve Cope from Silver Viper. Steve, welcome back once again, because I think this is the third time that we've been talking already this year. And that's because you've got an awful lot of exciting work going on down there in that very rich mineral belt in Mexico. Before we get started, let's tell viewers what your symbol is and what exchange you're on, and then let's talk a little bit about your latest results, because you've just sort of wrapped up a drilling program last month.
Yeah, so we trade on the TSX Venture under the symbol VIPR, and on the OTCQB under the symbol VIPRF. Yeah, it's been very exciting times where we still actually have an ongoing program. We have 2 rigs turning right now, one on our various exploration targets and another one on our discovery at El Ruby. We put out a batch of results that was only 2 holes from the resumption of drilling that we resumed drilling in June on the back end of Mexico reopening mining and mining exploration. We've been drilling ever since with 2 rigs, but we've only reported 2 out of 26 holes. We're expecting news any day now. The labs are a bit slow, I think, as everyone went racing back, and they may not be running as big a crews, but we're expecting lots of news flow moving forward, and we continue to have 2 rigs going. So it should be steady news flow through the remainder of the year.
You know, when we met in Toronto back at the beginning of March, we had this discussion. Things were looking incredibly promising. Maybe that's the best way to put it. But and in that discussion, we touched on, well, okay, there's uncertainty as always, coronavirus. How did the coronavirus impact Silver Viper?
So we had to pause. We made that decision before Mexico actually forced everyone to pause, but we said, socially responsible, that we thought it would be pertinent that we pause, see what's going on with this virus, get the proper protocols into place, and wait. And then, I think it was a week after we paused that Mexico froze all mining and mining exploration. After that, there was, pressure from other parties in the country to deem mining an essential service, like a lot of other countries around the world had done, especially in Mexico, when their top 2 industries, were completely shut down with tourism and oil and gas. So mining being number 3 it was very important that the country figure out a way to have that resume, for the sake of their economy. They ultimately ended up deciding that June 1st was a hard deadline that everyone could resume, but if you were in an area that was less hit by the virus, you could actually start to get back in and get set up in the middle of May. We were in one of those areas. I think went back in a week before June just to get the camp back up and set up and ready to go, and resume drilling right off the bat on June 1st. It has certainly changed a lot of things. We are now following a lot of the government protocols. The drilling company that we use has also been quite helpful in testing guys before they come out to camp. So we've been isolating people in Hermosillo, running a quick test, which we at times has come back with positive results, but on doing a more comprehensive test on the follow-up on that, we haven't had actually anyone have the coronavirus yet. We've had a couple of false positives, but we're going through those protocols because we want to make sure before any of these our workers, both from the drilling company and our geologists and our geology crew, that we're not getting the virus into a camp, because that could lead to something that we don't want to have to deal with. So we're being very careful. We're above and beyond to make sure that everyone is safe, and that we're doing the right thing by continuing to work in these times. Everything has gone very smoothly since then. The drilling company's been fantastic, and we haven't had any issues at all.
So when we last talked, you were kind of walking or stepping your way across the property to make sure that you could get all of the results that are going to confirm what you believe to be there. You say you've got results in from 4 holes, and you've got how many more holes under development right at the moment?
Yeah, there's 24 holes to date that haven't been reported. Some of those are just being completed; they're not logged yet. The lab, I believe, on the results we're waiting for is about 14 days behind schedule. So just for reference on how much slower the lab has gone, we were putting out results every 2 weeks leading up to the virus. So we're anxiously awaiting the final results. We've seen some preliminary numbers from some of those holes, and we're very happy, and we're continuing to explore both at El Ruby and the drill just finished at the eastern anomaly is moving to a southern extension of El Ruby that's off of the plateau there. But it's, it's very exciting times, and we're anxiously awaiting those results. It's a bit frustrating because it's very helpful having the assays when you're trying to plan exploration, especially on those targets where we're only putting, 6, 7 holes into them. We can visually see that, it's mineralized and we're in a zone, but you'd like to get the confirmation of the really high grade assays to follow up the same way we have at El Ruby. So from that perspective, it's, we're not getting the information as fast as you would normally like it, but it's such as the times, and we can certainly still plan our exploration based on, our XRF gun that we have on site, and visuals and the logging of the core.
So when we take a look at the current price of gold and silver, how's that impacting you and your ability to ensure that you have the necessary interest and financial resources that you require to be able to continue to move forward and prove out this property?
Well, I mean, the metal price has been fantastic. It's,
Yeah.
we're seeing a lot of that generalist money that we've all been waiting for the last 8 years to start coming back in our space. I mean, just the end of last week, you saw Warren Buffett, who's been, one of the biggest negatives on the gold sector, take a very large investment in Barrick, over $500 million. So, I think there's a large following there that will follow him back into precious metals, and it's a sign that, he, in his case, guy who's been very pro bank in the U.S. and he sold two of his biggest positions in two of the biggest banks in the U.S. and then bought Barrick with Berkshire Hathaway. So, very exciting. We've seen that. We just raised 5.2 million just before we resumed drilling in June. Again, there's been lots of demand. There's lots of big investors that have been approaching us, asking us to do a strategic in the company, and we're kind of saying, well, look at metals prices, and we're cashed up right now. We're not in any hurry to dilute at these prices. Let's let some of these assays come out and hit the market, and see where our share price settles in, and then we'll look at possibly doing a strategic or something else. So it's been, phenomenal, because we've gone through 8 years where you've got to work really hard to raise money to exploration, and now you're seeing, companies I've never heard of are doing $10 million financings, and
Right.
I think it's a sign of, guys are coming into this market and they're trying to figure out where to put their money, and they're investing in everyone right now, which is great, but ultimately the best companies are going to rise to the top and make shareholders the most money. There's a lot of guys that are making big moves right now, but often, they're companies that you probably shouldn't be investing in, where, I would say companies like ours that are, real, we're putting the work, we're putting the money where it belongs, and we've had results to back things up. So I think our share price has been going up organically, and I'm proud of the team and the work that we've been putting in, and the results that we've been creating, and we're really starting to create a lot of awareness about our company, and people are starting to really follow us, and right now the big thing is they're trying to figure out how they can get a position and not chase the price up too much, because their stock is pretty tightly held.
So what is the opportunity right at the moment with Silver Viper? I mean, if I'm an investor, I'm watching you for the first time in this interview, I'm asking myself, so what's the opportunity?
Well, you're typically, these precious metals bull markets last 8 to 10 years. I would argue that we're very much in the first year of one of those cycles right now. So, people are watching gold and silver, and they're trading, and you see some people panicking and exiting when gold falls back below 2,000. I would argue that 8 to 10 years from now, you're going to look back and laugh at $2,000 gold, because it's going to be a lot higher, as it is in every run. I think if it went up on the same ratio it did in the last bull run, I think we'd be at like $18,000 gold by the end of this cycle, or something along those lines. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but those are the types of gains typically you see over those 10 years in precious metals, and then at the end of the bull run, it falls back off, but it sets a new low, and then we do it again in 5, 6 years. So, one, you're getting exposure to metals with a group that has a great track record of exploration, and then two, because this is a tightly held, it's a new company. It's very easy for the share price to go up. And when you're talking about exploration stocks, if we have success and grow this to the size that one of the majors is going to be interested in, that's when you start, talking about the 10, 20 baggers that people are looking for when they're investing in junior stocks. And that's a very forward-looking statement, and I'm not promising that that's going to happen, but that's the type of potential you have when you're investing in a junior mining exploration stock. If we can continue to make new discoveries, continue to grow El Ruby and surrounding zones, and then ultimately get bought out by one of the big major mining companies, well, maybe we will be at, $5 a share, $6 a share by the time that happens, or higher. You never know. I mean, we've got one peer that Silvercrest that's in the next valley over, and they've been, the darling of the exploration space and now development space for a long time, and they're trading at $13. But I remember at PDAC 3 or 4 years ago on their exploration results, they were down at 20 cents. So you keep putting out good results and keep growing an asset, and again, that's what can happen, and that's what investors are looking for. And if you invest in 10 or 15 of your favorite junior stocks, and 2 or 3 of them have wins like that, well, you've made a lot of money, and the rest can go to zero for all you care, and you're well ahead. Hopefully you do better than that, and more continue to go up, and a lot of them will continue to go up in a precious metals market like this. But this is a very exciting time for me as an investor. I'm excited about this market that we're finally in a bull month, because you've seen through history how much money investors can make in one of these cycles.
You talked about your track record. There's a lot of people who don't know Silver Viper. They don't know you. Let's talk a little bit about your track record, the history of the company. Tell us about Silver Viper. How did it come together? How did you wind up with this property? And then we'll come along to where do we go from here?
Yeah, Silver Viper was done as an IPO at the end of 2017. We added the La Virginia project to the company in 2018, and started work on the project at the end of 2018, which is when we made our El Ruby discovery.
Where did your initial relationship with the La Virginia property come into play? Like, how did you discover this?
We were approached by a project generator group out of Mexico that had the internal claims on the project where all the historic work was done. And they approached us and, we've got this project. It hasn't had any work done on it since Minefinders and Pan American, were doing work on it in 2013.
Pan American Silver.
Pan American Silver controls all the surrounding claims, 100% for over 30,000 hectares. But we have a combative relationship with them. You guys have had a good relationship in the past through some of your other entities. And we believe still to do have a very good relationship with Pan American. Is there any way you would look at doing, something here and bringing this project back together? So we saw, some of the results that have been made public on the project. Were, obviously very interested in those grades and widths. And then signed a CA with Pan American, got access to the full database, and then went down and did a site visit and saw that only a very small portion of the project had been explored, and you could see the same structures running on surface for tens of kilometers. So there was no reason there shouldn't be additional discoveries and potential to grow this thing up to a very large size. And the first exploration target that we ended up testing after we were able to bring the deal and project back together and consolidate it into one claims package, we made that discovery at El Ruby, which was proof of, our concept and our idea of, there was going to be lots of room for additional discoveries. Now, hopefully on these next assays, maybe we can have 1 or 2 more discoveries on some of our other anomalies that have been tested. And we certainly know that we've hit some mineralization. We'll just see if it's up at the grade that is discovery worthy as far as having a title on it. But that's how we brought it all back together. And then as far as the company sits within a group called the Belcara Management Group. It's a private management group. We have 3 public companies under our management at the moment. And, each of us takes kind of the lead on one of the companies, but it's huge for us as an exploration company because we have 3 senior geologists on staff at the moment with, worked all over the world. They work for producers. And, it's a big advantage for us as most juniors that are single companies, you can't afford to have 3 senior geologists on staff, but we're able to share our costs and our salaries, across the 3 companies. So our G&A burn is a lot lower than a lot of our peers on a per month basis. And we get, 3 sets of senior geologist eyes on the project, going over ideas, what they've seen in the past, what they're thinking. And I think that's absolutely invaluable for us as a group. And because of that, the majors want to get involved with our group at earlier stages. We've partnered with Agnico Eagle, Hecla, First Majestic, Coeur, Pan American multiple times. Most of our last big success was selling Orco Silver in a bidding war between First Majestic and Coeur Mining for the La Preciosa deposit, which is a project that we put the first drill hole into and grew to over 270 million ounces of silver. Sold it for 375 million in 2012.
Yeah. So let's talk about where the La Virginia property is in Mexico, because there are going to be people who go, okay, so you've got this great potential. What's your ability to be able to service it and get metals to market should you be successful? Or if you vend out to a major, what kind of challenges or benefits are they going to realize because of where you're located?
So we're in eastern Sonora, which is the top gold producing state in Mexico and number three silver producing state. It's got a very rich mining history. Most of the major miners that operate in Mexico have at least one mine, if not more, operating in Sonora. Where we are is sitting in the kind of the Sierra Madre Mountains on the eastern side of the state after you come out of the desert. The project was originally found by mine finders looking. They had the Dolores mine operating just across the border, 100K to the, or just across the state border in Chihuahua, 100K to the south, but in the same major regional trend. And to the north, we have the El Tigre past producing mine, which is 100K to the north. And in between, there was nothing. There was no other mines. There wasn't a lot of exploration work done. Most people in Sonora were used to working in the desert and probably a bit lazy as far as, wanting to hike in the mountains and deal with up there. But it's a very prolific mining trend. And when you look at the periodicity of mines in Mexico, you would expect there to be multiple mines in between El Tigre and Dolores within that trend. They flew the whole range, settled on this project being the lookalike on surface to Dolores. It certainly produced a lot of results that maybe were higher grade than a number of things that Dolores produced when it was in its exploration phase. But there's a multi-million ounce gold producing project on an equivalent basis. And then to the north, you've got El Tigre, which is multi-million on an equivalent basis of what it produced and has a million ounce resource on it at the moment as well. With the junior Silver Tiger is doing the work on that company. As far as infrastructure, we take a paved highway from Hermosillo all the way to the local town of Nacori Chico. From there, we're about a half hour in on a gravel dirt road that's fairly well kept to camp. We are in a mountainous area, so where El Ruby is isolated, but El Ruby, and it doesn't have a road to El Ruby, we stage and hike into El Ruby, and the drillers do that every shift, and it's fine. And we use mules to move the core back and forth to the staging area. But what's nice about El Ruby is it's a 2K by 2K flat plateau, so it's far more favorable to open pit mining, far less strip, and our deposit comes right to surface on El Ruby. So I think, El Ruby is going to be the main event. It probably is the most logical spot if we get, to a size where you would do it, but that you would build your mill and plant and your pit and everything would be up in that portion of the project. So whoever would end up operating would have to extend the road, but that's not that big of a cost, and upgrade the road there. We have water year round. The Power Authority in Mexico just put a brand new power line corridor that goes right through the middle of that portion of the project to connect the town of Nacori Chico to the next town down the road at Mesa Tres Rios. So that's a huge, savings that a lot of projects in Mexico don't have, and having that power corridor going right through the middle of your project and being able to tie into it. It checks off most of the boxes that you're looking for in infrastructure, and we've had majors already under CA come to site, and that was one of our first questions was, is there any issues here or any problems that you foresee, if we get it to the size? And the general message across all of them was, if we can mine this isn't a problem. Like, there's a lot going for it here. So we're taking them at their word on that, and pretty not worried about infrastructure or anything as far as extra costs. And again, it's in a state that doesn't have any royalties and is very pro mining.
So El Ruby is your main point of focus, but you're also in Matcha Libra, is that correct? Where you're drilling right now. What does it look like there?
So Matcha Libre it's really probably a southern extension of the same zone that El Ruby is. There's, like we described, there's a 2K by 2K plateau at El Ruby. Off of that plateau to the south, you come down and there's one of those, a creek bed that runs year round, and that's our source of water for drilling at El Ruby. And then you come back up the slope south, and you see these large silicified dikes outcropping on surface, and that is the start of about 2Ks of potential mineralization that is Matcha Libre. Matcha Libre was a funny name, actually. It was When I was down on my site visit, a Matcha was a male mule, and one of the mules that was Cora had gotten away from the handlers, and we saw it up sitting next to one of those silicified dikes on the ridge, sitting there eating grass, laughing at the other mules that were carrying Cora back and forth. So we decided to name that target after the liberated Matcha, the male mule that was running around on that hill. But okay,
I'm gonna have a little play on words here, and you're hoping to liberate resources from that area in honor of that mule.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting target, and it's got lots of potential. Some of the results we've already put out on that, we haven't hit the screaming grades yet, but we have seen the zone in every hole and the system. So it's, for us, it's vectoring in on where we're going to get those blowouts, whether it's going deeper or finding it within the range. I think you'll see some some higher grades for sure in the coming 6 holes that are yet to be reported on Matcha Libre. I know we have some better visuals there, but again, the assays and the lab are king as far as what the numbers are going to actually be. But no, we're still very high on that target. And then the rig, after finishing up with those initial reconnaissance holes there, went to the eastern anomaly. We holes, I believe, into the 7 holes into the eastern anomaly. And, those assays as well. And again, we've seen some, promising visuals, but we've got to wait for assays. And hopefully we see some of those first assays coming in here. Maybe even before this is out to the public. We're expecting them any day to get into the lab. So, or into ours, and then we'll news release those immediately. And then, like you say, the other rig is systematically stepping out to the north on El Ruby, our main discovery. We still have the historic zones at Las Vegas, Virginia, in the same major trend, 5 kilometers south of El Ruby. And, there was over 50,000 meters done by Pan American and mine finders on those targets. And we are working towards a maiden resource at the moment. And one of the main reasons for doing that resource is to finally get some value for our shareholders out of that historic zone. Put a number, get an ounce number behind those, and also bring El Ruby into a maiden resource so we can start getting valued instead of base case. Right now we're at 0 as far as most are concerned. We've got a lot of great results, but it's hard for investors to really figure out how many ounces that equates to. So where, COVID is again slowed down the resource process because we need to get our independent that's based out of Canada down to site. And with travel restrictions, it's not the easiest thing because he would have to isolate from his family when he comes home after doing a site visit. So he will be going down at some point this year, but we're hoping that, some of these cases can ease off and potentially we'll see, but there may be, some of the restrictions on coming home may not be as strict as far as isolating away from your own family. So we're still expecting to have a resource out by the end of the year. They've done a lot of work on the project already. It's just getting that independent down the site.
Okay, so we're in a really interesting situation right now. We've got good metal prices. You're well financed. Your long-term plan is to vend into a major. What's the level of interest that you see swirling around Silver Viper right at the moment?
It's growing daily.
I bet it is. Yeah.
Every conference, it is a new story, and it's getting on people's radar. And the fact that we have a silver component, there's a lot of people that are pretty excited about the potential for silver, even more than gold, and closing the ratio. We've heard Eric Sprott talk about it quite frequently, as well as a lot of the other people that investors look to. But historically, that number in a bull market typically will get down, can get to 10, 15, 20 to 1, and we're sitting at least 75 to 1 or so today. But a month ago we were at 110 to 1, so it's already starting. It's been certainly gaining quickly on gold. With gold, for example, you got gold is at a new high, and silver's at just over half of what its high was in the last bull run. So there's lots of potential there, and there's not a lot of quality silver exploration stories out there. And that's been the general message across the board: is people really want access to silver, and there's maybe 10 silver exploration companies around the world right now that people are getting really excited about. Silver Viper is one of them. And the more people I talk to, or the more virtual conferences and interviews and we do, it's getting in front of more people. We mentioned our ticker symbol in the US. We just recently upgraded that to the QB from being a pink sheet listing, and that has already seen a huge increase in volume on that listing, making it easier for US investors who are starting to pour back in, that have never even heard of gold and silver, ignored it completely, and they're again looking for the quality companies and people that have exposure to gold and silver, and we're getting that kind of traction and interest from a lot of those investors.
Okay, Steve, I can hardly wait. I've already talked to you 3 times now this year. I can hardly wait till the 4th when you're going to say, look at what we found. And so we'll be waiting. We'll be waiing for updates.
I hope we can put out a hole that's better than the last one, but we put out some pretty spectacular multi-kilogram results. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. But I think there's lots of potential for us to continue to put out some pretty spectacular results.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining me, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.